And in case you have any questions, you'd like to unmute yourself, would like to ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. I won't be able to see anyone raising the hand or getting attention because I just see myself on the screen and whoever is speaking. But if you have any questions, please put it in the chat and I will unmute you and you can ask a question. Just bear in mind that you're going to be recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, you're more than welcome to stay until the end, and then I will stop the recording and you can ask questions in a more private manner. So brilliant, let's kick off. So Ricky, it's brilliant to have you here. So who are you? What do you do? And what's your story? And the story is very, very, very interesting. That's why we have people here today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Julia. And thank you for everybody attending and giving me the opportunity to present to you today. So my name's Ricky, and I work in the National Health Service here in the United Kingdom. And I'm based in a city called Southampton, famous for where the Titanic left from. So if anybody is interested in boating and marinas, we're the place for you. So I have trained as a health psychologist, and I've been working in the financial services when I first joined the workplace, working for Goldman Sachs. And I've been working in the National Health Service for the past 15 years in a various number of roles, from public health commissioning, health psychology, mental health, and I'm now currently the Associate Director of Organisational Development in Isle of Wight NHS Trust. So the Isle of Wight is a small island of 142,000 people. So we're off the mainland, and we provide a number of integrated healthcare services there. So I do appreciate people on the call today may not be from the healthcare industry. So I will be talking about the work of promoting equality, diversity and inclusion in a pandemic, so that it can be relatable to your business sectors as well. So I will firstly share my screen. So I'll go through a presentation format, but I will keep it interactive so you have opportunities to have a discussion. And the focus for today for me was not so much just to give you lots of theory, but to give you some practical tools and guidance. So if there's anything that I talk about today which you feel is relevant to your business area, or that you would like to share more learning, then I'll be more than happy to email you via earlier and disseminate some of our learning and practices. So again, thank you for your time and inviting me. And I'll just wait for Alia to give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen, my presentation slide. Fantastic, thank you so much. Great, thank you, Alia. I was hoping my executive director would be here today, but she's just having some difficulty joining the call. So if she does join, that would be fantastic. But again, my name's Ricky. I'm the Associate Director of Organisational Development. So the aim of today's session is to understand the delivery of equality, diversity and inclusion in a pandemic. More specifically, an opportunity to review our methodology of supporting colleagues in a pandemic, to reflect how we eliminate unlawful discrimination and promote equal opportunity, and how we respond to individual needs. This is really important. So here in the UK, equality and diversity has strong legislative legal backgrounds. However, a number of organizations struggle with what is the methodology of integrating diversity and inclusion at every level of the business, so that there is a return on investment, that it is an ethical and moral right thing to do, but then what difference does it make to our people? So again, I'll focus on the individuality of diversity and inclusion today as well. So just to give you a little bit of a background of the NHS, the National Health Service, we have 1.3 million employees. So we are a very, very large organization, one of the largest in Europe. And of 1.3 million employees, 77% are female. So we are a significantly, female staff are a significant majority within the National Health Service. But as you can imagine, as you go into the senior levels of the organization, you'll find there is a higher representation of males in the organization. So again, the Women on Board agenda, gender equality, is something that we still need to address here in the UK, within the National Health Service. In my organization, the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, we have 70% female representation on executive board, which is a fantastic achievement. And we've been doing a lot of work around making sure we have strong representation of women in executive positions. So 70% make up the executive director positions. Quite often organizations will include non-executive directors. I report that separately, just to be open and transparent of gender. And we also have a statutory requirement to publish our gender pay gap on an annual basis. So again, lots of strong programs in place around gender. But our NHS People promise in supporting people in the pandemic and in the future is that we are compassionate and inclusive. Our people are recognised and rewarded. They're safe and healthy. They have a voice that counts. We are continually learning as an organisation, because COVID-19 has had a significant impact, as you know, not only on our people, our communities, but the way our business runs, how we can work flexibly, and we are one team. So again, really, really important in terms of sticking to the organisational values. What does success factors look like when dealing or managing diversity and inclusion? For me, it is co-leadership at every level. So some of the questions we need to ask our organizations is, if I am from a minority background or gender, race, religion, age, etc., do we have co-leadership at every level? So when business decisions are being made, how do we ensure our people have their voice heard? Engagement with staff networks is really important. So very similar to your organizations, we have a number of employee affinity groups, such as race equality, disability equality, and LGBT plus equality groups within my own organization. I think it's important to build on good practice. So today I want to share a lot of the work that I've designed, which has been used nationally here in the UK. And again, very, very happy to share Vialia, and we can then disseminate to you as well. And accountability through board level metrics. So this is really important to make sure our executive board members are very clear in regards to the delivery of diversity and inclusion. So I wanted to share this slide with you. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the Equality Act 2010. So equality and diversity has a very strong legal framework here in the UK, and there are 9 protected characteristics. So people in employment or out in our communities are protected by law that they should not experience unlawful discrimination and must promote equal opportunity across these 9 protected characteristics. So this again shows the strength of equality legislation that we have here in the UK. And there is an extra requirement on public sector organizations, what we call a public sector equality duty. So again, further requirements of how we should be evidencing and demonstrating equality within the workplace and in our communities. And quite importantly, this is a slide one of my favorite graphics is when you go back to the workplace and you think about diversity and inclusion, either in the pandemic or generally, is to ask your colleagues, how many words with the letter C can they describe how they engage people? And it's fascinating when you ask this question, because quite often they'll think of communication, but then it gets a bit more difficult. Okay, collaboration or contribution. And if you do this as a bit of an experiment over the next few days, I would guarantee nobody will come up with the word congratulate as part of their words. So it's really important that once we are in a pandemic, or more generally managing diversity and inclusion, recognizing our people for their efforts is really important. When it comes to inclusion, you and I, our colleagues, people in society are being very, very brave in terms of coming into the workplace or delivering healthcare and public sector services. So that being brave is something that we should celebrate and something that we should recognize our people for doing. So again, we'll make sure you can get these slides, and you'll be able to ask these questions as well. I've got a quick activity for you. So 6-word stories. So in 6 words, I would like you to write down or describe the best workplace you have ever known. So if you could write down your 6 words, the best workplace you have ever known.
You can add it in the chat if you want.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah, if you can edit, yeah, even better. If you add it into the chat, that'll be fantastic. And then Olya can give your thoughts. Fantastic. So we're starting to get some comments through. Fantastic. So empathetic, inclusive, innovative, creative, diverse, supportive, flexible. I really like that word, flexible, from Joshua. Flexible working, and that's had a real impact in terms of the way we offer flexibility within the workplace. Diverse, human, from Jessica, absolutely. Being treated as an individual, be treated as a human is very, very powerful. Fantastic comments there, absolutely. And Kirsty and Damien, recognition, acceptance, diversity, challenge, equality, colourful, absolutely. And Ole, respecting, colourful, humane, supportive, dynamic, fun, fantastic words in terms of how we can describe our 6-word stories. And again, this is a really good way and a simple way of engaging our people and understanding what the best workplace that we look for. Conversely, what I would like, and Louisa, thank you, yeah, kindly monitored, but that's absolutely fine. Just very quickly in the chat, if you, in 6 words, if you could describe the worst workplace you have known. So how would you describe the worst workplace you have known? Toxic, yeah, judgmental, rigid, yeah, political, toxic has come up, blaming, revenge, mean girls. Yeah, absolutely. Too conservative, uncaring, and bullying. And it's interesting, Louisa, you've talked about bullying, because in the NHS here in the UK, we have a very big problem with bullying and harassment in the workplace at any level, to any group. And what we find is people who are from minority backgrounds, disabled, or from LGBT plus backgrounds experience the highest rates of bullying and harassment in the workplace. So again, what we find is protected groups do experience unfair. And again, another fantastic comment, Louisa, because again, one of the critical questions we ask in our employee survey is, do you feel the organization demonstrates equal opportunity in career development and progression? And again, for a number of minority groups, protected groups, they would say no. So we have to demonstrate equal opportunity in everything that we do. And again, lots of interesting comments, where it's personal instead of professional, lazy. So as you can see, quite a stark contrasts in words and feelings. And the reason why this exercise is so important is it gets to, in a very simple way, getting people to understand how they feel within the workplace, and then how do these words relate to the organization that you work in. So your head of employee engagement or head of employee experience, I'm sure, would be asking these types of questions, but then importantly, what are they doing about it, which is a key question. Thank you for your participation, and I really appreciate some fantastic words that we'll keep a log of. So you will all know about VUCA, managing a VUCA world. We are living in a VUCA world quite categorically. So we are in a world that is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. And the reason why I wanted to check with you around your thoughts around the best workplace that you have ever known, there's a psychologist called Ogbana and Harris here in the UK, have done some research around the 12 steps of high-performing teams. And in the context of COVID-19, this is an approach I've taken to make sure we are delivering on equality, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. And the 12 steps are team purpose. So when we are living in a VUCA world and we are living in a pandemic, it is quite important that we have that team purpose. We are all potentially working remotely. We have staff who are shielding. I know I can disclose to you my education center. So I have my own building on my site that I'm in charge of, had got converted into a field hospital, with the premise that just in case we have a number of people who acquire COVID-19, that we will be able to care for them in terms of the excess numbers. So I've been displaced into another part of the building within the education sector where I live. So again, it's important that we have that team purpose. Feeling valued. How do we continue our recognition schemes, our kindness to each other when we are living in a pandemic? So again, thinking about recognition schemes is really important. I won't go through all of these, but just to give you an idea, in my organization, I've been holding away days, so virtual team development away days, which are evidence-based. So we send out a diagnostic survey of 15 questions based on these 12 steps, and we then undertake a fun team away day. So even if it's held remotely, so we can connect people together. So lots of work, and in the presentation now, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about health and well-being as well. So again, I'm not going to go through all the details, but one of the biggest outcomes that we look at when we're navigating a VUCA world is that the workforce is supported to remain healthy, with a focus on addressing health and lifestyle issues that impact on staff and our wider population. So again, and here's an 8-step model that we can share with you. Just to give you a bit more clarity around a organizational framework, this is a framework I really like, and I'm going to pick on one element. So when we're thinking about how does my organization, or if you have responsibility for managing in a pandemic, is there capacity?
Ricky, I think we're losing you a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Do let me know if you have to drop out. Number 3.
I think now the microphone, I think it's either the microphone or the connection.
So can you hear me now? Is that better?
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
so for number 3, we have here, do we have a culture of high quality, sustainable care? So when we think about the way we look after our people is our organizational culture. So when we send out this presentation to you, I've contained some key lines of inquiry, which I call Chloe, that questions you can ask your organization, or if you're managing your team or service, things that you can have a think about as a checklist. So is equality and diversity promoted within the organization? Do people feel that they are treated equitably? And Louisa very rightly talked about having fairness and equity in the workplace. Do employees feel supported, respected, and valued? So if I was a manager leading my service, what are the actions I'm undertaking that people do feel respected within the workplace? Is action taken, number 5, is action taken to address behavior and performance that is inconsistent with the vision and values? So again, the unfairness, the bullying, how is that managed and tackled within the organization? And again, 10 points here altogether. So is there a strong emphasis on health and well-being and safety? Does the culture encourage openness and honesty? So again, what are the methods of raising a concern within your organization? So thinking back to your words of what the worst workplace was, if there was unfairness, bullying, rigidness, a lack of kindness, how would one open up about those feelings? And is there fear of discrimination or fear of victimization if you raise a concern? So when we're managing diversity and inclusion in a pandemic, one of my key learnings for today is this is very much related to the culture of the organization. And I cannot stress that enough. Here's a practical tool I can give you. So I talked about culture and I talked about well-being, and I've introduced a framework called a health and well-being check-in. So when we first, when COVID-19 hit the UK around the end of February, beginning of March, middle of March, this was a time when we were undertaking appraisals within our organization. So I adapted the appraisal paperwork and converted it into a health and well-being check-in. So we were asking and giving tools and resources to our people around, where's my mental health today? So quite often there's a lot of discrimination and stigma attached to mental health, and giving our staff the opportunity of how they feel mentally and physically. Practical tools around how you can look after your well-being. I don't know about you guys. I've been working from home for the last 4 months, and my sleep is terrible. I go to sleep, last night I went to sleep at 1:30 at night, stopped work at 7 o'clock in the evening, but I just wanted some downtime, because I'm not traveling or commuting to work, or I don't have, my pattern of work has been disrupted. So I'm sleeping a lot later than I should be. I'm quite poor in my diet. So a lot of fast food, a lot of snacks, lots of cans of Coke. And so I really need time to look after myself and reflect, what am I doing to look after my well-being? So, and think about your stress container. I don't know if you ever thought of stress as in terms of a stress container. And this is a really interesting way of thinking about your resilience. So if you think of resilience in terms of a bucket that you walk around with, how full is your resilience in that bucket? And what is piercing holes in that bucket that is draining your resilience? So again, there's interesting opportunities and techniques that we can share with you. And I've left in a link where you'll be able to click on this website, and it will give you lots and lots of resources that you can use as an individual, or you can share within your team as well. This is just an example of the health and well-being check-in. So translating in terms of our appraisal. So first of all, if I was going to complete this myself, my name, the date, and the question I would ask as a manager is, how is your health and well-being? And on the right-hand side, there's some prompts that you could use just to check in with your staff in the context of COVID-19 and living in a pandemic. So, your health and well-being, how do you feel? Do you have what you need? And what does the team culture currently feel like? Which are really, really basic, but very, very powerful questions to ask. How is your role going? What's your standout moment? What are you really proud of that you've achieved in the last 3 to 4 months? Something that you find challenging, and what do you need from your manager? So again, very, very simple questions that you can ask. And then there's a bit about the appraisal in terms of your development going forward as well.
Let me interrupt for a second, Ricky. I just would like to say how fascinating that, and how many companies will not be able to do that because there is a lack of safe space. Asking very simple but very, very powerful questions. And I would imagine for so many companies, people will not just simply answer those questions because there is no safe space available for that. And it makes me really congratulate NHS for creating the safe space, really, really safe space for people who will be able to express their concerns, who will be able to express their fears and vulnerabilities. That's a really, really that's remarkable. That's asking such questions and getting answers, most importantly, because I guess any organization can ask those questions, but how many people will actually be able to answer them? And it's not anonymous, it's all present for everyone to see, or how does it work?
Yeah, really important questions, and I've just seen some thoughts and reflections from Louisa and Ole Heidelker as well. And if I just very quickly address those. So for Ole, how do people address concerns in the NHS? Really, really important question. So we've introduced what we call a freedom to speak up guardian. So every NHS organisation here in the UK must appoint a freedom to speak up guardian, which is a strictly confidential forum where staff from any background can raise their concerns, and that person acts as an advocate, a champion, and a guardian for that person. So that's working very well for us. We also then, that's a confidential forum. We also have HR. So we've been promoting our HR services as an opportunity to raise concerns, and to do so confidentially. That does take trust, because what we had to do quite importantly was look at the communication marketing of our HR department, because quite often people would think, I've done something wrong, that's why HR are contacting me, or there's a disciplinary, or there's sickness to be managed, or performance. But we kind of transformed the ethos of human resources as a people function, and it's still a lot of work to be done, but that's another way. And a third method is we have a incident reporting framework, which is all online. So I'm similar, you probably have those as well in your organizations, where one can report concerns, which is more about service delivery rather than individual concerns. So my advice is to really have a multi-methods approach to raising concerns, but having someone almost independent, like a freedom to speak up guardian, is very useful. And if you're interested, Ole, or anybody, email me and I can share with you a lot more detail around the websites around that gives you that information, and a framework that you could also use as well.
To speak guardian, it's more like a buddy that supports you in
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So their role is solely on speaking up and raising concerns. So they manage. So you could contact them. They keep their own confidential record, and they act as an advocate or a buddy for you, so that your concern is listened to, is managed appropriately within the organisation. So.
And it's someone more senior, or how do you select a person?
Good question. Open recruitment. So in my organization, there was an open recruitment process, and they report to the chief executive, the CEO of the company. They can report to the HR director, but I think to add the gravitas to the role, I think reporting to the CEO is very, very powerful. So, but then there is a responsibility on this person to be confidential and not disclose. Okay, if I contacted the Guardian, Ricky contacted me and has raised all these different concerns. So, we manage it very, very carefully in terms of confidentiality. Yeah.
Thank you. And do you also have some sort of code of conduct or code of ethics, that if something goes wrong and it's something that needs to be resolved, that people know how to follow, what are the next steps, is it disciplinary panel or whatever it's called, and then people know the next steps of procedure.
Absolutely, and again, I think this is what we're very strong at. We're here within the UK because of the very strict equality laws that we have in. And whilst I say, there are very strict equality laws, we do have a significant equality challenge within the UK. Research, with the impact of Black Lives Matter and a number of programs, I would say, out of all ethnic groups, the Black British or Black category people experience the highest rates of discrimination within the workplace and in society. And I'm very open in saying that, yes, all minority groups do experience forms or, age, disability. That's the reason why we have very strict legal frameworks in the UK under the Equality Act. But our groups who are under the Black category, in terms of their ethnic background, do experience quite significant forms of discrimination. So it's something that we need to address immediately and transform in the workplace, but also in society as well. So
thank you for sharing that. I find the problem, I wouldn't say the problem, but the main challenge when it comes to Germany is that the term race, it has a very negative connotation because of Nazi history, and there is no census in Germany. So there is no separation by race of whether a person of is Asian or Black or mixed or whatever not, because Germany sees still the fact, like, if you don't talk about race, there's not going to be any racism, unfortunately. So the racism here, it's quite subtle, and it's pretended that nothing happens. And it happens somewhere in the US, but it doesn't happen in Germany, which is unfortunate. So there is no census. There is no way to officially mark, and if you don't count, count it, so to say. And there's approximately 1 million people in Germany that consider themselves Black or who are Black, but it's all unofficial. So there've been lots of movements towards having the unofficial census in order to include those people and to create the awareness in terms of their equality, in terms of diversity of Germany as well.
And absolutely, and this is where, quite differently, by contrast, in where I've been working. So in my previous organization, having just joined Isle of Wight 6 months ago, I had 6,000 employees. So out of the 1.3 million in my own organization, there were 6,000 employees. But for each of the protected groups, so age, disability, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, I had 90% equality monitoring. So for race, I had 100%, and for all other gender was 100%. Sexual orientation, religion, and belief was at 90%. So we did a lot of work in understanding the equality monitoring of our workforce. The reason why that's important is it enables you to understand equal opportunity better. So when I report recruitment and selection data, I look at the applications received, those that are shortlisted, and those who are appointed. Quite simple. But because we have very good equality monitoring, it then allows me to identify which groups are disadvantaged or over-advantaged or overrepresented. And what you find is those who are from minority backgrounds significantly are underrepresented when it comes to appointments. So the process is very inclusive, from applications received to shortlisted, but something happens when the person goes to the interview panel, and then you see a significant decline in success at that stage. So, but then that's an opportunity to ask questions, why is this happening? So now what we've introduced is diverse panels. So quite often before we would not have diverse panels. So now we've put in assurance and safeguards to promote equal opportunity within that. So again, practical steps that we could use. So, okay, shall I continue with any questions? Yep.
There are no questions so far. All the questions have been answered, but if the audience would like to ask questions, please ask them at Slido. And the reason why I disabled the chat is that it's quite distracting for the speaker, and also for some people to be more inclusive and to ask the question probably anonymous if you want to ask it anonymous instead of asking it in the chat.
Yeah, so please do shout out earlier when those questions come through. So yeah. Fantastic, brilliant. Okay. So something else that's worked really well in my organization is at the start of COVID, again, Ole asked a question around the methods of raising concerns. I set up a service called a listening ear. So I have a number of trained coaches within my organization and within my team. So I thought to utilize their skills around providing a signposting service around health and well-being. So if one of my colleagues within the organization is having a difficult time, or they wanted someone to chat to because they're working from home and they're feeling lonely or isolated, they text this number, and within 24 hours they will receive an appointment, and we will see them within. They'll receive a telephone call back from one of our trained coaches within 48 hours. So this listening ear service has been a fantastic method of supporting people who are feeling isolated. And we've also developed some resources just to share with our people around sleeping well. So again, some very practical steps and tools, which, you know, I'm more than happy for you to copy and paste and use if you feel this is useful for yourself in your own organizations. But quite often, and as I mentioned, I'm a health psychologist, and we kind of forget the basics of looking after ourselves. And this is just a reminder of kind of like a checklist for you. So lots of resources I can send to you like that. This has worked really well. So I designed a one-to-one or a manager's one-to-one schedule to use with their team members to have a focus, put a spotlight on their health and well-being. So if any of you have management responsibilities, this is a schedule that you can use and provides you with questions to ask your team members of how they're feeling. So again, you know, what outcome would you like from this discussion? What would you like to make this time together valuable? And then it goes into more details of how is the current situation with COVID-19 impacting on you. So again, you know, there's a lot of our managers may not have the capabilities or the skills or the knowledge of what questions to ask in this time. So this framework, you are more than happy to take away. And if it's useful in sharing in your own organizations, by all means, you know, please do utilize this as well. But our managers have fed back to me that they found this quite useful to give a bit of structure to their one-to-ones with their staff. So again, something that, you know, you can absolutely use as well.
So you basically create a coaching culture in the organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I strongly believe in coaching cultures, and I think this the listening ear coaching, we actively pay and support our colleagues, our team members, to undertake coaching qualifications, because they may be supporting. Okay, I work in the organizational development team, and we provide coaching to our people. However, a manager with a coaching qualification is fantastic because they can support their team members better, or think of different strategies. So it's a good way of moving forward, Alia, absolutely. Any questions before I move on, just in regards to that?
I think all questions have been answered.
Great, fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'll go on to the next section. So how we eliminate discrimination and promote equal opportunity. So the UK has a large and diverse Black, Asian, minority ethnic community, which accounts for 14% of the population in England and Wales. And we found very early on an association between ethnicity and COVID-19 incidents. So what we found was if you are from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background, you are more likely to suffer an adverse impact to COVID-19. And very sadly, we've had over 200 deaths of healthcare staff within the National Health Service looking after our populations and our patients. So a significant concern there. And other risk factors include age, gender, pregnancy, long-term conditions, and BMI status. So again, we're expanding the risk factors and making sure every single member of staff has a risk assessment completed. So I'll be interested in the chat whether your organization has required you to have a risk assessment for COVID-19. There's lots of shakes saying no. So again, what the safeguard I've introduced in my organization is I want every single member of staff, employee, to have a COVID-19 risk assessment. So if they are coming into the workplace or even if they're at home, we have a safeguard in place. And some members of staff, we have simply said it's not safe for you to come into work because of their risk, because of their age. So anybody over 70 years of age, we have stated you continue to work from home and we will support you to work from home. Anybody who's over a certain week pregnant, you work from home, you don't have to come into the workplace. So again, we're making some very, very strong safeguards in place. I don't know, I apologize for the font of this diagram, but this is a really, really good diagram when you're thinking about integrating diversity and inclusion into your business. And this is
could you perhaps zoom it a little bit?
Zoom it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
can go into it. Is that better? Brilliant. I'll go a bit more than I can go. I can use my screen as well. So again, because it's quite a screen, I won't go through all elements, but this just gives you a really good prompt to thinking about how do I integrate diversity and inclusion into my organization. And it starts off with leadership. So some of the questions we should be asking is there the leadership capability in terms of diversity and inclusion? What training and development do we need to educate our leaders around the impact of COVID-19 and through the lens of diversity and inclusion? And Alia delivers some fantastic training programs to organizations in respect of leadership as well. So you've got a fantastic person there that you can link in with. Is there the commitment? Is there accountability? Is there the leadership and engagement from our senior leaders? Is there visible support to you? Has your CEO or trust board member, executive board member engaged with you to find out how you're feeling and the impact COVID-19 is having? Is it integrated with your values? And are you seeing inclusive, kind behaviors within the workplace? Because what we have found, and this may be due to increased stress within the organization, we have seen examples of incivility, rudeness, and unkindness from staff to staff. So that's something that we need to address. So again, this is just for reference, really, and this is work that was done by Deloitte, the Deloitte Diversity and Inclusion Integration Wheel, and it's a fantastic way of looking at organizational culture and how it impacts on inclusion. So again, this is something that you can use within the presentation. So what does that mean? So once we have a business integration wheel, what does that mean? So I've designed 5 actions that I want my senior leaders to champion within the organization. Every member of staff will have a risk assessment to keep them safe. And I'm very happy to share my risk assessment template with you as well. Every organization needs an ethnic co-leader. So a person of color, someone from a minority background, ethnic background, to work alongside the executive board when it comes to race equality within the workplace. Diversity starts through inclusive and diverse leadership. So a call to action to increase the diversity at senior levels of the organization. A bespoke health and well-being offer for all staff, protecting their well-being, and increasing diversity and inclusion in our communications. So quite often, when I did a review of our communication strategy, there was no diversity or inclusion elements. So by doing that review, it educated our communications and our engagement team about diversifying their messages, which again has a more positive impact. I won't spend too much on this long on this slide, but these are the 4 objectives of my organizational development plan: leadership, staff engagement, health and well-being, and diversity and inclusion. So our equality networks are very strong. I held the Race Equality Network this morning. We have championing a diversity calendar of events, so preparing for Black History Month in October, which we have in the UK, and also making it meaningful as well, rather than tokenistic or as a tick box. So we are communicating staff stories. So the approach I'm taking is, how do we elevate the voice of Black people within our organization and from our communities? Positive experiences and negative experiences that they hold within the organization. And we also have a very strong framework of a race equality standard. So there are metrics in place, performance metrics, that we have to publish at a national level to demonstrate openness and transparency of how Black people, or race, in terms of race equality and disability equality, how people experience the organization. Something that might be quite interesting as well, I also launched the delivery of compassionate care spaces. I'm going to talk about compassion later on, but one of my clinical psychologists runs compassionate care spaces. So these are opportunities for staff, an open invite for staff to come together, and the psychologist then holds a compassionate care space. So people can talk about their feelings and things that are impacting on their well-being, and the psychologist then to work with them in terms, almost like a little bit like group therapy in a way, but a compassionate care space. So what I've done here is there's a quite nice video that gives you a bit more of a framework in regards to what I've been talking about in terms of the business integration wheel, and it gives you some good guidance and prompts. But just to talk about the metrics, these are some of the metrics that we've got in place for our workforce. So when we're managing diversity and inclusion in a pandemic, during COVID-19 times, these are the metrics that I am reporting to my executive board and providing assurance of how we are delivering this for all of our people. So do we have fair recruitment and selection processes? Are we committed to equal pay? So gender pay gap, we publish nationally. Training and development opportunities are open and inclusive to everybody. We tackle bullying and harassment in the workplace. We offer flexible working opportunities, and our staff engagement elicits positive experiences for our people. But then here's some specific guidance for inclusive leadership in regards to our senior leaders. This is really interesting, and this might be of quite benefit to yourselves. Around, we have introduced a health and well-being diagnostic framework. So this outlines how I am delivering health and well-being in supporting our people in COVID-19 times. So the benefit of this, it looks at organizational enablers and interventions. So the enablers of positive well-being is having board leadership, effective line management, and having an organizational wide plan, data and communication, and a healthy work environment. And we have underpinned that with a lot of activity around mental health, musculoskeletal, and healthy lifestyles. Those who are working from home, are you sitting in the right posture? I'm at my dining table with a very uncomfortable steel chair, and I've been working like this for 4 months. And I know there's a lot of nods from the delegates, and it's something that we have to think about. Quite often when you're at home, you would have what we call a DSE workplace assessment, to making sure we've got the right chair, the equipment is of a right height, but we're on our dining tables, we're on our dining chairs, or we're on the sofa. One of my colleagues, a senior manager, and this is quite serious in a way, she sits in her bed so her laptop is on our laps, and she sits in her bed. And I said to her, whenever for the last 3 months, I've just seen you on your bed when you're doing Zoom calls, because I see your bed frame behind you. But then I said, just imagine you're sleeping all night in your bed and you're working all day in your bed, and we're not doing the steps that we should be doing. You quite often think about those who are in a workplace right now. If you have different meetings, you'll be walking about to different meetings. You'll bump into Hans, or you bump into Ole, you bump into Louisa, and you'll have a bit of a chat. You'll walk to the canteen, and then you walk back to your office. If you're a bit like me, I'm an extrovert, and I love to be around people. I'll go bug my team and just get them to talk about football. And congratulations to Bayern Munich. I shouldn't say that in Berlin, should I? Hertha Berlin is your team, if I remember. So again, those things that we have taken for granted have been taken away from us. So we really need to build compassion in the workplace, that don't feel guilty if you take a break. Don't feel guilty if you go for a walk for 20 minutes. To make sure you are feeling happy and healthy. So that's all part of healthy lifestyles. What I've done, though, I've created a diagnostic framework for organizations then to evidence what they're doing around board leadership. So if you go away and have a conversation with your head of health and well-being, and you're looking for a framework of how you can measure your response to workplace health and well-being, I'll be very happy to share this diagnostic with you, so you can actually undertake a self-assessment of the interventions that you have in place. And your board will be happy because it gives a performance dashboard in terms of all the evidence that you're doing. As I start to close and come towards the end of the presentation, I just wanted to focus on compassion, compassionate leadership during the times of diversity and inclusion in managing a pandemic. And I love this slide. It says, love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. A quote by Dalai Lama. And if you could just spend a minute or a couple of minutes, could you define compassion? What does compassion mean to you? Fantastic. Some brilliant words coming through there. Having from Ryla, having understanding for others, feeling understood. So thank you, Amanda. Feeling understood and cared for, like your feelings matter. Oliver, feeling important and meaningful, non-judgmental, having empathy, caring for others, absolutely. Listening without replying. I love that from Jessica. Listening without replying, internalizing and supporting. Fantastic, Jessica. Really powerful words there. And how, giving ourselves that opportunity to listen with fascination, and not having that urge just to jump in and giving someone the opportunity to say what they want to say. Ole, fantastic, putting yourself into someone else's shoes. And so important when it comes to diversity and inclusion, that we have the opportunity to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and listening to their experiences, not just for people from different racial backgrounds, but I mean everybody. When we talk about inclusion is about every single member within our workforce, every single member in society. So it's really important to think about how we celebrate diversity, but how we use staff stories, positive and negative experiences, to get a deeper understanding of how people experience the workplace, but also the challenges that they have in society. And I can share one example from this morning from my own race equality network in my own organization, and a Muslim member of staff who was born in England. Her parents were born in England. She was Pakistani origin, and she came into an altercation with parking her car on the hospital site, and a member of the public swore at her and told her to go back to where she came from. So again, it's, she had a very bad impact on her. And she said, Ricky, I was born in England. My parents were born in England. I'm British, and this had a very negative impact on my identity. And so we, whilst we have very strong legislation in the UK, we experience very, very strong experiences of discrimination at any level. And that's just one very quick example of what can happen. And it can happen in the workplace as well. So, we have to be very, very mindful. So what I'd like to share with you, so thank you so much for your words there around compassion, is here's a framework. I'm not sure whether you may have, I apologize if you've seen this before, but this is a very good framework where understanding compassion in the workplace. So a strategy that you can use is paying attention. So again, remember Jessica said about paying attention and having a deeper understanding of the people and listening to them. We understand what is causing another person's distress by making an appraisal of the cause. We have an empathetic response in relations to another person's distress. So you put yourself in that person's shoes, and you take intelligent, thoughtful, and appropriate action to help relieve another person's suffering. So again, this is a very strong way of understanding compassion. In a little bit more detail, attending or having attention, vital for ensuring that key challenges are identified, understanding difficulties and challenges, and people who actively listen without judgment, clarify, summarize, reflect, and share. Understanding, not hierarchical, but directive and supportive, making people feel empowered to have their say, and engaging coaching behaviors to discover solutions. So again, a key theme from today is about that coaching relationship. And even if you don't have a coaching qualification, that doesn't mean you can't undertake a coaching relationship with people. It's just asking the right and listening.
You're breaking out a little bit.
Sorry, okay. So it must be my connection, I do apologize. So empathizing, so making sure we demonstrate empathy. So somebody in the chat wrote empathy as a compassionate behavior. And this can lead to greater resilience, more motivation, and compassion creates a sense of feeling valued at work. So again, my take for you is when you go away and think about how do we manage diversity inclusion in a pandemic, a lot of the focus is on kindness and compassion. And finally, helping. Take thoughtful, intelligent action to help. Work with staff to support them in their work, and help staff develop new ideas and ways of doing things. So although I was born in England and my parents were born in England, I identify as British Asian because I'm of Indian origin. However, I see myself as British, but I can't know all the answers for all Asians and the experiences all Asian people experience. So I can only talk about my own experience. So we shouldn't make assumptions about other people. So if I was to think about we want to improve diversity and inclusion, or we want to improve health and well-being, or a compassionate, inclusive culture, then I need to go to Louisa and ask her. I need to go to Ole. I need to go to Jessica. I need to go to Olia. So again, the engagement, the 10 C's of engagement, like we did earlier, is really, really important. So the key objective in diversity and inclusion integration, the key indicator is so the key objective is integration. The key indicator is when inclusion is considered business as usual. So it's not seen as a separate thing to do. It's a business priority, which we all know about. But if we just go back simply to definitions, equality is demonstrating equal opportunity in everything that we do. Diversity is respecting and valuing individual differences. And being inclusive means that the workplace culture and daily practices support diverse people. So again, my advice is, please don't overcomplicate things when it comes to diversity and inclusion. It's quite simple, and it's these three things that we need to ensure. Great. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll just check if there's anything else I can share with you. But thank you. I'll be very, very happy. Lots of information, but I hope it has given you some food for thought and some practical tools. And very happy to share my contact details. And if anything from what we've covered today is useful, then by all means, very happy to share. And very happy to take any questions as part of the panel discussion.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ricky, for this really hands-on and really practical tools, practical experience from your side. Very, very interesting. I particularly really like the metrics, because quite often the challenge with diversity inclusion is that there is not enough of measurement, there is not enough metrics. And from my experience as someone who consults and works with companies or trains, is that business leaders, and I really like what you said at the end, the way diversity inclusion should be business as usual instead of something separate. And quite often, Germany is not there yet when it comes to diversity inclusion. It's still seen as something nice to have. It's still seen as a more of a reactive approach, especially now due to Black Lives Matter. There is a lot of hype, which is, a good thing, because people finally starting to think about it. But it should not be hype. It should not be a passing trend. And I think metrics really help to convince business leaders to really think in a strategic way, to see diversity inclusion not as a nice fluffy thing that we all get together and hold hands and sing songs. Trust me, some people still think that way, but a more of a strategic approach to managing a workforce, to being productive, to being effective, to being innovative. And so I really like what you shared about the metrics.
Fantastic.
Brilliant stuff. I would like to challenge you though. I really like, to play a bit of a devil's advocate, and to really, people who are here today, people who are more audience, as I assume, they work in commercial companies. They work more companies, probably startups, no more than 150 people, 200 people, startups that quite often have very budget restrictions. A lot of companies don't even have learning and development budget. A lot of companies have almost no budget when it comes to diversity inclusion. So when it comes to inclusion, what I believe is more effective is not having trainings, it's not having kickoff trainer coming in and fixing everything, but more of inclusion by design. When you fix the procedures, when you fix systems, what you mentioned about recruitment, what you mentioned about performance, really fixing, and not fixing people, but fixing the system on the inside. So what do you think will be the best first steps for a company that does not have the capacity, does not have a scalability, so to say, as NHS had, in terms of hiring coaches, creating this listening ear? What will be the first easy and ideally not very expensive ways to implement that? And especially companies have a lot of pressure at the moment in terms of COVID-19, having to scale down in terms of staff, having almost no budget, and having pressure from investors, and the whole situation at the moment, and lots of other priorities.
Yeah. Wow, that's a fantastic question, and put me under a bit of pressure. So, I think that just is a really important question, absolutely, and I think this is not just happening in Berlin across Germany; it's happening right across the world. And my advice is always to kind of take that opportunity to review, reflect, and refocus. So you remember from my first screen review. Your methodology of implementing diversity and inclusion. Actually, let me take a step back. I think it's understanding what equality and diversity inclusion means to the startup, to the business, or the commercial organization. Quite simply, that's why I left the end on the definition. So for me, my organization, equality is about equal opportunity, celebrating diversity, and making sure everybody's included in our engagement programs and well-being programs. So my advice is review your methodology, undertake an inclusion diagnostic. So engaging with your people and finding out what matters to you most around diversity and inclusion. Two very, very simple questions. What are we doing well? What do we need to do better? So again, don't overcomplicate equality, diversity, and inclusion. If my organization, if my CEO came to me and said, Ricky, I want your opinions on equality and diversity, I would want her to say to me, even though I'm an associate director, which makes no difference, what's working well for you, what's not working well for you. So what I would say is, really honestly, what's working for me personally is I have not experienced the challenges and the barriers a significant amount of minority people experience in progressing into senior levels of the organization. So when I go to a lot of business meetings, I'm the only Asian in the village. I'm literally the only person of color around the table in my position when I'm with the board and etc. My finance director, who's female, she's the only female around the table when she goes to her meetings because it's all males in terms of finance. So if you ask those questions as part of your diagnostic, that's a really good starting point. And you can further enhance that by asking some specific questions around the employee journey. So how is your recruitment? How's your onboarding experience? How could that be better? So your first 3 months in place. How was your recruitment and selection process experience? What's your experience of career development and progression? What's your experience of bullying and harassment? What's your experience of raising concerns? So thinking about a lot of the things we've been talking about today, to do a semi-structured interview as part of a diagnostic is a brilliant way of giving the organization an understanding of where they are. And again, very, very happy, and I'll share this with you earlier, and I can give you a framework, what an interview schedule can look like. So you can go into an organization and then undertake that diagnostic, and then you can then identify solutions. Some may require a cost, some may require no cost at all. Being kind to each other, being respectful to each other, and treating each other with compassion doesn't cost any money. If we get that right, then I think we solve a lot of problems when it comes to diversity and inclusion, in my opinion. So again, it's about getting that respect back in the workplace, back in society, which is I'm happy to be challenged if you disagree. But those are the things that don't cost any money. The most important things don't cost any money.
Absolutely. I guess for some companies, it also takes time to build this trust, to build the safe space, if that not has been the case before that. And from your perspective, who do you think, if a company would like to take the first step towards diversity inclusion, should it be external person coming to them and doing the diagnostic and assessing the company and providing them solutions or recommendations, or should it be someone in the company? Should it be employee resource group that does that on a volunteer basis, or should it be someone from HR, or should it be appointed person? What worked best in your experience?
Another really good question. I think having someone independent is my first point of call, because let's say if I wanted someone to do a diagnostic in my organization, I'll be coming to you, Alia. I'll be saying, Alia, come and do a diagnostic for me, because you're independent, you don't have an agenda, you don't know the politics, and you don't have an assumption about the organization. So you can come in as what I describe as a clean person, to have that, you don't have that organizational memory. So it gives you an opportunity with an open mind to undertake that diagnostic. But conversely, then what I would expect for you to do then is to link in with the employee network groups, to link in with the executive board and management teams, to undertake a diagnostic with them and find out how they're experiencing, what they, quite often I've worked with some CEOs here in the UK, and they think they are absolutely brilliant at diversity and inclusion. And Ricky, I want us to get to gold standard within 3 months. I'm like, okay, you really don't understand the challenges you have within your organization around diversity and inclusion, and you can't change organizational culture just within 3 months. You have to build trust. You have to build inclusive leadership. So my answer is, it's helpful if it's independent, but that independent person does need to work closely with the structures within the organization.
Yeah, the person has to be definitely empowered. What I quite often see is that somebody, invites me to have a diversity inclusion training, say train 150 employees on intercultural communication or anti-racism or anti-discrimination, whatever the priority is. And then the expectations are that I spend the whole day with a group of, say, 15 people. And then at the end of the day, people are interculturally competent, anti-racist, no sexism at all. And then analogy that I have is that going to a gym for one day, spending 7 hours at a gym with a coach, training push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and at the end of the day you lose 10 kilos. And that's the expectation that and unfortunately, it's as you mentioned before, it's a lot of either a tick that, oh yes, we have done a diversity inclusion training, or tokenism. Let's hire someone who's a person of color. I did actually experience several people approaching me within the last 3 months, it's 3 months today actually, since the murder of George Floyd, saying, oh, do you know anyone who's a person of color that is looking for a job? We would like to hire someone. And the intention is good, and I cannot blame people for the intention is good. You can't blame people for the lack of awareness of what the challenges it creates. But I think people is the first step. That needs to be awareness. That's actually the reason, one of the reasons why I started this series, because I think quite often people, especially if they're in a majority group and more Caucasian, and if they, straight, white, to say normality as is seen in the Western world, they have, especially now, a lot of fear talking about diversity, because they are afraid to say something wrong, to not know what some particular terms mean, and to be ashamed that they don't know them and they're supposed to know them. And a lot of them rather not speak about it at all. So I would love to see more of white straight guys talking about diversity, but they're afraid. And I think it creates a lot of exclusion. Ironically, when you talk about diversity, it excludes someone who is straight, someone who is white, someone who's neurotypical, whatever there is. And I think to empower people as the first step is to create awareness that it's okay not to know, to create a safe space, and to give them opportunity to also ask questions. And I really like what you said about discussion. When somebody from the company has the space to talk about their own experiences, either positive or negative, of being from a marginalized group, and anybody can ask them these questions, because sometimes you're just afraid to ask the wrong question or be looked at like, how do you not know this? Or, were you born yesterday? But when you create this space, I think it creates a lot of understanding, a lot more trust. But yeah.
I absolutely agree, and we have the same problem here, same impact here in the UK. I've been, I can see Louisa nodding as well, and even yesterday in a HR meeting, somebody said, one of my senior managers in HR said, "Well, you can't say anything nowadays, can you?" And I was like, it's education, it's awareness, and it's spending more time with diverse groups. And someone said in the chat about put yourself in someone else's shoes. Literally, you do that through engagement. Look at the community groups that you have within Berlin, and organizations. How invite speakers from community groups. Tell us more about your culture. Tell us more. Whether it be LGBT, race, age, gender, disability. There's lots of community support groups and voluntary organizations in Berlin who are doing a fantastic amount of work in supporting communities. Getting those community organizations into the workplace to share their stories, that's a wonderful opportunity. So yes, I think it helps with professionals like yourself and myself to have a focus around education and awareness, but then to supplement that with community groups, because these startups are reliant on their customers. Who are their customers? People out in the communities. Yeah. Who are the people out in the communities? Older people, younger people, black people, white people, disabled people. So this is about delivering excellent customer service. So I worked for Goldman Sachs. So return on investment is very important to me, and I believe in diversity and inclusion for the right reasons. But with my business hat on, these are my customers. I want to purchase my products and purchase my services. So if I don't demonstrate that awareness and that kindness and curiosity is the right word. If I don't demonstrate that curiosity to learn more, then I'm not creating product knowledge or my customer knowledge. So again, it can help on the bottom line as well.
Brilliant. I really like to bring this, also business perspective, not seeing diversity as something that it's nice, something like on the bottom of the priority, but actually seeing how much impact it makes, and that it's in terms of design, in terms of product development, in terms of customer support, in terms of market research, whatever not. So it's everywhere. And what I personally also learning now, and actually changing whenever I need to start a conversation when it comes to diversity inclusion to someone who's at executive level, very impact driven, very money oriented, very like fun return on investment, I never talk about diversity inclusion. I never mention the words culture, the word discrimination, the words whatever not. You talk about leadership development, and you kind of frame it in a very different way. And people, it's their language. That's what they resonate a lot with. Whenever you talk about discrimination, whenever you have to give a training when it comes to, discrimination or whatever not, you never name a training. Welcome to anti-discrimination, anti-safety. You're going to spend the whole day with me talking about that. It's like, never. And a lot of companies I talked to, they didn't even realize that, like, oh, but we already announced that. We wanted to bring it into like, never, because it creates a very negative connotations. Like, what happened in our company? Is it after our last company party? What happened there? You frame it in a very different way. And and I think sometimes it helps to speak, like, looking at who you want to convince, what language do they speak? Do they speak emotions? Do they speak financial return? Do they speak customer satisfaction? And then you kind of like approach it from their perspective.
Absolutely. It's communication and marketing. And I think it's, this is where the diagnostic is so important, because then you get an understanding of where the business understands diversity and inclusion. And then you devise your strategies to how you're going to use to integrate. So the integration wheel I showed you is a good tool to use, because you can base your diagnostic on that, but then you can draw out elements from there. So what is this trust? What's this executive board or the CEO telling me? around their thoughts and reflections around diversity and inclusion, link it to the business integration wheel, and then you're talking their language, but then at the same time you're achieving what the true nature of diversity and inclusion, which is, for me, employee satisfaction, employee engagement, and employee outcomes, and respond to the needs of our customers, and if it's a private sector organization, profit. So there's no shame in saying that in diversity and inclusion. It's the business world we live in. So I think if we start to tackle the inequality that we have in our workplace, then that will drive its business investment. So yeah, lots of ways of looking at that.
Brilliant. I love this really hands-on approach. That's what I love it. Thank you so much, Vicky. I think it's been brilliant discussion, pretty insights, really happy to have you here tonight. And thank you. And thank you to the audience for being with us. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your contributions. And thank you for your insights as well from your experience. So it's been wonderful. We have our last event of the 10-event series tomorrow. It's going to be a mini workshop. I'm going to lead it by myself, a mini workshop discussion group about unconscious bias. So that's going to be the last event. I'm personally very excited that it's, as much as I loved it, I'm really excited that it's all over. It's been 10 very long weeks. And as a little present for all of you, it's a little bit contribution to the community. I already mentioned it to Ricky. I've created a little ebook about all the terms of diversity inclusion from A to Z. So it's about 150 words, all the terminologies, all the definitions. So going to share it with all of you next week. It's now in being proofread, and then it's going to be sent to designer, and then next week you're going to all receive that. So yeah, thank you once again. If you have any questions, I'm going to